Hey, this is Jared Krause, host of the Buying Online Businesses podcast. And in this episode, I'm speaking with Eric Su, who's an investor, founder, and advisor to multiple companies. He's the chairman of his digital marketing agency, Single Grain, which has worked with many massive companies like Uber, Amazon, and Salesforce. And he also has two podcasts, one of which is Marketing School with Neil Patel, and his own Leveling Up, which is an entrepreneurial podcast helping people scale their online businesses. Now, in this podcast episode, Eric and I talk about how playing any game, whether that's a video game or a sports game, is the same as being in business, and how much you can learn just from playing video games or sports games and business that cross-pollinate with each other, which is very fascinating. We also talk about how to have a bulletproof mindset, even when things get as bad as they can possibly get in business and in life. Then we dive into talking about what a poker mindset is and what you can actually learn from poker. Then we talk about why time is actually with you, not against you, which is a key learning. And lastly, we talk about how having a living vision is very, very critical. Now, this is such a jam-packed, valuable episode. You're going to love it. Let's get stuck into it. Today's episode is brought to us by Niche Website Builders, which is a company a few of my clients have used and are using for content creation and link building services. They do everything from start to finish. So from keyword research to uploading your completed article for you. We've also had Bob members buy ready-made affiliate sites built by Niche Website Builders too. So if you're looking to outrank your competitors' content and build better backlinks, check out nichewebsite.builders. That's without the .com. So that's www.nichewebsite.builders. And I'll put a link in the description for you guys too. Hey, Eric, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jared.
I'm really excited for this one. In fact, one of the people in your office reached out and said that you guys asked a bunch of your audience who they listen to in podcasts, and I'm very grateful that I was one of those people, one of those podcasts they listened to. Was that your podcast, Leveling Up podcast?
I think,
or was it the one with Neil?
I think it was Leveling Up.
Cool. Yeah, cool. Awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited to have this chat, and I'm glad that I'm slowly starting to gain some traction here, which is fun. I went through a bit of a blurb and a bit of an explanation about the book that you've got coming out, which is, really exciting. And I see that you come from a place of playing a lot of video games, right? Personally, I got into a couple of video games that didn't entrench me, but I'm a big believer in that life is like a game, right? And I relate it so much to personal, business, even relationships, and it's helped me so much thinking about all of that being a game. So tell me more about like how those lessons, crossed over from gaming to business and leveling up in business. Like, was there a defining moment where you're like, hang on a second, this is kind of like some of these games that I'm playing?
Yeah. By the way, did you play any sports or anything growing up?
I did. Yeah. Yep.
What'd you play?
A lot of surfing and a lot of football and basketball.
Got it.
Yeah.
What did you like about football?
I actually just loved hanging out with my mates. Yeah, mostly.
Okay, perfect. So me growing up in the suburbs of Los Angeles, Asian parents, where they want you to study hard and they want to compare you to the other kids because they want to be proud of you and they just want to brag, right?
Yeah.
I never liked school. And so therefore I was never really acknowledged by my parents. I was constantly getting compared that I was not good enough. And so when you feel like that growing up, you have a chip on your shoulder, right? So a lot of, programming, how we are, it comes from childhood. And fortunately, I was able to find gaming, and I didn't really participate in sports in elementary school or high school. And so when I got into gaming, I learned a lot about communication. I learned a lot about resilience. I learned a lot about teamwork, to your point. I had community, and I felt like I had a place where I belonged. So I go from not being acknowledged to having a community and feeling like you're part of something bigger than yourself. That goes a long way, right? And if you think about the 4 things, the 4 points of leverage, you have code, capital, labor, and media, right? Part of media is having an audience and it's having a community. That's the most valuable thing. And we know through the pandemic that whether you're an introvert or not, that we all miss gathering and getting together, right? So that's kind of that was the impetus to get into gaming. And then gaming taught me a lot more. The biggest thing I got from gaming too was understanding that, man, I wake up excited every single day and I just need to find something in real life that feels like a game and I'll be set forever. Fortunately, long time later, I discovered that game to be business, right? So there's a lot that goes into that, but I'll just leave it with that for starters.
Yeah, that's great. I am so with you in fact that like I love like what gets me out of bed in the morning is 2 things. I no longer play football, but what gets me out of bed is surfing straight up.
Mm-hmm.
Like I do that almost every day, and then I come home and I work. And both of these are a game. Both of them are fun for me. In fact, when I surf too much, I end up getting tired and I underperform. And I realize the same with business because I actually love it. Like I could do the 70, 80, 100-hour work week.
Yeah.
I start to get poor results. And do you find that's a thing as well? Like for you and your business and employees working too much and all that sort of stuff too?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. It's everything in moderation. By the way, I would have parents push back on me and saying, gaming is not a good thing. And I'll say everything in moderation. If to your point, if you surf too much, you're going to get tired. If you work out too much and you overextend, it's too much. So for example, I get on my Peloton bike all the time. I can't be doing hit rides, climb rides, interval rides all the time. Today, I took a low impact ride. Yeah. So it ebbs and flows, right? There's levels within leveling up. You can't go hard all the time. And I think gaming is a great stepping stone. But the key thing is this: for those of you that continue to play games right now, I would say gaming is a shadow version of yourself. So when you're playing football or if you're playing, let's say, basketball, you're going in there to hone skills that you want to take back into real life, right? That's assuming you don't become a professional player. So go in there, train, come back, and translate the skills where you can make a bigger impact on the world. And if you want to play the great game of business, you can play it. Or if you want to just, learn the concept of leveling up and just be a great, employee, that's also fine.
I love this because how I relate this to playing a game and in business is that I've started to play a lot of tennis with my brother. And I notice when I'll go aggressive at the ball or aggressive at the net or even aggressive like serve, I will notice that I will make mistakes. And the better times that I play, like the times that I play actually better, is when I actually just focus on getting the ball in, not going hard and just making less mistakes. And when I come back to business, is I've noticed that when I've gone too hard or too aggressive with something or spent too much money in a certain area or invested too much in a certain area, I've come in quite aggressively, and that's increased my risk tolerance in business. And I relate that back to tennis into
you can't force things. I think I played a lot of poker in college, and there would be times where I would try to force my luck, and I just dig the hole deeper and deeper till in the United States, your credit score is scored out of 850. I remember when I was 19 years old, I took a $50 free roll. So I won a tournament, $0, and I won 50 from that. I made that 50 into $15,000. And I thought I was on top of the world. By the way, 19 years old, that's all the money in the world. Yeah. And in the next 3 days, I lost all the 15K. And then actually I overdrew my, I applied for multiple credit cards, and I went through this downward spiral where I was trying to force it. And I ended up in debt 25K that I didn't pay off till I was about maybe 24, 25 years old. Right. So that's a perfect example of trying to force the issue when it's not there. When the opening is not there, you don't force it.
Yeah, I like this. I think we should come back to the forcing because this is something that, we do it different. We can do it different stages and different seasons of business and life. I think we'll come back to that. But I want to talk about like where you're at now, right? Like you didn't just click your fingers and get there. There was a certain path to get to where you're at. The same with me, the same with everybody that had to go through this hero journey or whatever. And in the book, you actually talk about, you seeing where you're at now and then also where you want to go, and then creating a map for a lifetime. And you talk about mindset within that. So tell me more about the type of mindset that you need to have to level up for going
Yeah.
through that journey.
Yeah. I think one of the key things, everybody should think like an investor. When you think about the Warren Buffetts of the world, Charlie Munger, his partner, he didn't start making his billions till about 50. He didn't really start to, he was rich, make no mistake about it, but he didn't really start to become the Oracle of Omaha until 50 plus. And so a lot of investors will say time in market is greater than timing the market. You would know, you're basically an investor, right?
Yeah.
And so I think patience is number one. Well, let's use another, quote. Let's use Bill Gates this time. Thinking about, we often underestimate how much we can do in a decade, and we overestimate what we could do in a year. And if you actually look at the last decade, if you've been working, or just look at your last 10 years, so much has been done. And so I think in the kind of the micro, you want to move very quickly with urgency, but just understanding that you're playing this marathon, right? So there's all these cliches, but it all makes sense, right? It's what the ultimate word at the end of the day is, if you're smart, you're continuing to learn, and you're just patient. Most people just can't stomach things, right? They don't spend enough time learning. So what ends up happening, let's use this as an example. Everyone's investing in the stock markets right now. They don't really know what's going on. They haven't paid their dues. And so when the correction hits and they lose everything, they're not going to know what to do, versus the people that have continually learned and then been patient, right? It's just completely different.
Yeah, those people are very reactional. And like you said, it does all make sense, and it all does tie into one another. If we can just tie in what we were previously talking about, is that when you go too aggressive in a certain area, it's because we become impatient and we want the result yesterday. Mm-hmm. And I find that's been a big part of my journey, and probably like what you said in your experience. But if we realize that, hang on, if I just take it steady and I do it the right way, and you go from this mindset that I believe it's just been something that I've found in reflections that I've had recently, is that you go from time being against you to time being on your side, which is a massive epiphany. It was a huge epiphany for me. And this is something I only spoke about on the weekend with my partner, that I used to believe that I'm of a certain age and I see these people on social media achieving a certain result. I need to have that yesterday, and time is against me. And then I go, hang on a second. If I just do this methodically, over time it's going to compound, and time's actually on my side, not against me, right?
Yep. Snowball. Like that's the book Warren Buffett has, right? I think it's also important to understand that, most of us listening to this right now are probably very aggressive. So we are the gas. We do need someone that can complement us, someone that's the brake, right? So you need someone to pump the brakes as well. Because even for me, most of the time I talk really fast, and I've realized that even how fast I walk, how fast I talk, that should probably slow down as well, and that carries over into all your work. So the older you get, the wiser you get. It comes down to patience. And the final thing I'll say is, I think I put this in the book. It's very easy to compare, to your point, your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 25. Yeah. One person I looked at, by the way, he makes about $29 million a year take home, which is, you're basically like top 1% of top 1%, right? And so it's really easy for me to want to say, I want to do 29 a year, right? But understanding that this person's been in business 13 years longer than I have, just understanding like, look, it takes time, right? And even if you don't hit the 29, why don't you here's the other thing, think about competing against yourself, 1% better every single day.
Yeah. A big thing that's helped me is looking back on, say, 2020, or each year I look back, you're like, what did I actually do? Like, where did I go? What did I do? And usually it's nothing astounding, but it's an improvement, definitely a certain improvement. I want to continue talking about mindset, because this is where it's really at. Like, the most of the battle in business, and probably, in gaming, is in the mindset. And you talk about poker mindset, and I actually don't know like much about poker at all. So I'd like to pick your brain around this poker mindset and what it actually is.
You play any chess?
No, I actually got a client that owns a chess site, and he's just
Yeah.
doing really well. And he's like, you got to get in a
Oh,
chess.
the Queen's Gambit is crushing for him.
Yeah, he's actually
Have you seen
had
the show?
record months. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Have you seen the show Queen's
Yeah,
Gambit
I
on
have,
Netflix?
and that and his business have made me go, all right, maybe I need to. They're two indicators for me that I need to sort of start learning chess.
I'll tell you what, I'll learn with you because I don't know how to play, but I
Cool.
think it's the same idea here, where in poker, it teaches you a lot. The main thing it teaches you is resilience because you get punched in the face all the time. It's poker is really business. Some of the best investors in the world, like Chamath Palihapitiya, Jason Calacanis, these people, they all hang out in Silicon Valley and they play poker together. They have a home game. They even have a podcast called All In, which is a move that you do in poker. So what I learned in poker I started playing when I was about 17 years old is sometimes you can bring your A game for 6 months and you can lose all 6 months. Sometimes you can get completely lucky and win 3 months in a row. There's a period of time where I would go into the casino. I was 18 years old, so Indian casino. And the dealers would say, hey, look, it's the kid that never loses, right? And so that's when I started getting really high on myself. You can't really get too high on yourself. You can't get too low on yourself. So there will be scenarios where if you lose 6 months at a time, it could be up to a year. And this is just math, right? It's you're just dealing with variance. To not get, again, keep yourself even keeled and to understand that this will pass, and it's about how you react to all of it, right? And oftentimes when you think about meditation, you think about surfing is a good example of meditation in my mind as well, because you're trying to establish a state of flow. Because if you start to downward spiral, you start to get out of control, that's when you're going to lose everything. And the perfect example of that would be when I was 20 years old or 19 years old, when I leveraged myself and my credit score dropped to 480. I was negative $25,000. And so that's a downward spiral. And in business and in life, you got to avoid that. That's one thing. The other thing poker teaches you is you got to be able to manage your bankroll. Don't play above your means. You got to learn how to read the table. Every opponent is different. Every business is different. You got to understand when your odds are good and when to go all in, right? It's a numbers game. And you also have to understand long term, if you make the right decisions, you're going to win no matter what. No matter if you lose for 6 months or 12 months, you are going to win. So that's what it is.
Numbers game, right? To stay in it again, it comes back to time is with you, not against you.
Poker makes you numb to losing. And I think that's very important. You get used to losing.
Yeah. It does suck to lose, right? But once you, I guess there's quotes around the person who's successful in business is the person who is, copped the most failures in life.
Oh yeah. It's the person that has the most battle scars. And so in poker all the time, you're losing all the time. When you have to fold a hand, you're losing, right? When you lose for the night, you're losing. There's a lot of losing that goes on. Get used to it.
Yeah. That's a good quote. Get used to it. So mindset's so huge. Like, in fact, I did a 4-part mindset series on the podcast, just probably 5 or 6 episodes before we're doing this one. Or actually probably 10. We were a bit in advance, but so important. But I want to talk about marketing now because, it's not just
real
marketing.
Quick, before we go to marketing on mindset, I think the way I look at it, and that's a game in itself too, because it's how we're programmed. So we're constantly thinking about how do we continually refine our mindset? How do we update the software in our head to build the perfect mindset, right? Because there's information that's changing all the time. And so I think how you're programmed matters. The information you're taking in, how you're programmed from a health standpoint, from a mental standpoint, all that stuff leads to a perfect mindset. But anyway, go ahead.
I'm happy to stick with mindset. I've got so many more questions on it. Like I said before we even hit record, I have floated the idea of just having a mental model podcast or a mindset.
You got to do it
in itself, man.
You got to do it for the Aussies.
Yeah,
and the world. Yeah,
and the world. That's right. Like, I actually love talking about mindset. What are some of the things, like, if you were to pick 2 or 3 of the best things that have helped you with being resilient in business? Because mindset's easy. Personal development's easy. Being positive is easy when things are going good in life, right? When business is going good. But that's the work that you put in through those good phases or those seasons or years really help dictate how you're going to handle or react to those uncertain times. So what are some of the things that you, 2 to 3 things that you've learned that have really helped you with those times you're like, this isn't going so good. Like I need to just make sure I've got my head in the right space.
Yeah, maybe I'll start with the other side where it was not going good, or when I was really worried. So when COVID hit, there was a period of time. I don't know if this happened to you, but it's like, crap, what's going to happen? There's this, I don't know if it was like stress or whatever, but my body just felt intense pressure for maybe like a day. But then the next day, I'm like, you know what? This is all great, because the worst case scenario, if everything falls apart, I'm still going to be fine, right? Just understanding that I'm fortunate enough to be able to play this game. That's good enough, right? And I can always rebuild. I know what I know already. And that's a worst case scenario. That's never going to happen, but you want to think worst case scenario just so you can prepare. And so from that point, you're just like, oh, if this is all house money, and if I'm just playing with, I'm just playing the game right now, I'm just going to keep playing. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how things develop. And so that's really where the poker mindset comes in, because when there's a couple times where things didn't go well, where when I took over the company, when I took over my ad agency, long time ago, the first year I took it over, we dropped all the way down to 1 employee, right? Nobody trusted me. Nobody believed in me, and completely my fault. And, from there, I'm like, you know what? That's fine. It is my fault. I'm going to keep going. And the poker mindset keeps me going. The resilience mindset keeps me going. The patience mindset keeps me going. Understanding that if it works out, it's going to be great. And that's allowed me to build everything else up to now, and allows us to do the things that we want to do. And so that's probably the most powerful thing, reframing and understanding that failure it's the ticket to success, makes it all the more easier.
There's a really good book that I love, The Obstacle is the Way. Like it's actually just the title in itself is the answer.
Yep.
Right. I love your reframing around a worst case scenario, because, and this is something I learned a while ago, is that if you think about what the possible worst case scenario could be, usually it never, and this is a keyword, usually it never gets to that stage. And if you can think of the worst case scenario, then normally you can think of how to get out of the worst case scenario, or what you could do that's going to make you still be able to survive in that worst case scenario. And then anything above that is gravy. It's going to make your life easier, right?
You know what I would say too? So yes, absolutely. And related to that, you're better off overreacting than underreacting. So before COVID hit the United States, at least, I was already preparing. So we shut down March 15th. I was already preparing late January, and people thought I was overreacting. My team thought I was overreacting, right? But it's important to also not look at what's only happening around you, but look at what's happening around the world at a macro scale. Yes. And understanding that, hey, if that's already happening in the world, how likely is it to happen over here? And how is it spread and all that? So it's good information first. And again, it's not going to cost me much to overreact in a lot of cases. But if I underreact, oh my God, we're going to be in trouble. So.
Yeah. And when we get to that position of, oh crap, like things are going to get really bad, and you overreact and you realize like, okay, cool. Or things get so bad that you're like, wow, I'm down to like myself and 1 employee, right? I've been there as well, like just sacked a chunk of people in 1 month.
Yeah.
It hurts. It hurts your
sucks.
business. It hurts your mental
psyche.
mind. It hurts every aspect, like especially if you got your identity wrapped up in your business, which is another story that we can talk about. But what do you do when you're in that position? Like, what do you think of, or what are the practices or the principles that you have that allow you to go, all right, I'm going to continue to move forwards and not fold anyway. I'm going to continue to move forwards and make this happen. What are the things, what's within you that allows you to do that?
Yeah, I think we can use the example of when I dropped all the way down to 1 employee. By the way, at the time when that happened, I actually happened to get a job offer. And this is when I was in my 20s, but it was basically pay me a very hefty salary with $1 million in bonuses. And it was like, oh, wow, my company's about to fail. Maybe I should take this job. I had actually said yes. And the moment I said yes, I realized I can never do that again. So I'm like, no, I'm going to keep going. Even though my outside accounting firm called me and said, hey, it might be time to shut it down. All signals were shut it down. I felt that there's nothing to lose. Worst case scenario, let's let it fail completely. Yeah. And my worst case scenario is someone else's best case scenario, right?
Yeah.
As long as you continue to learn, you can make your worst case scenario someone else's dream, right? Mm-hmm. And so I kept going, understanding that I had asymmetric upside. So meaning that heads, I win a lot. Tails, I'm not going to lose much. That was the bet, because when I took over this company, I had paid $2 out of pocket for it. It was a failing company. And the bet was always, if I could turn the company around, I could use those cash flows and reinvest it in more durable, exponential sources of revenue. That was also the thesis. That was always the thesis. So that's what kept me going, understanding that if I could just make it work, and it's a very simple business model, right? The business I took over was a marketing agency. To me, it's not the hardest thing in the world to do.
Yeah.
And so fortunately, just sticking with it a little longer, got me there. Most people would not have done it, but keep in mind, these types of deals where someone would sell me something for $2, it's not supposed to work out, right? It's supposed to be hard. And that's why the 4 other partners, by the way, my podcast co-host Neil was a partner as well. But the 4 other partners wanted out, and I was able to come in, buy low, and then make the most of that asset.
Yeah, great. So would you say a part of you continuing forwards, and this has been the case for me, is one option creates massive regret? Like if you went and got that job, you'd be like, far out. Like I regret not just sticking with this path. Like that's what I find. That's what has helped me, is realizing and being conscious that with different choices, they can be regret or different outcomes. Is that something that, or is there something else like a desire or a vision? Or
there's second and third order consequences. I think it's important that you talk about mental models. It's important to think about, if I do this, what are the ripple effects? But I also like how Jeff Bezos thinks about things, where he has this regret minimization framework, where he thinks about a decision. If I do not make this decision, am I going to regret it when I'm 80 years old? And that's a scenario where I did ask myself, am I going to regret not having gone the full distance for this? Yeah. The answer was yes. So you go.
Yeah. Yeah. This is something that with most of the big decisions I make in my life, is like, what am I going to regret more? And that's a simplified version to Jeff Bezos' crazy mind, which is good. His mindset. Yeah. Marketing, like it's not just something important for business. I think people don't even realize that they're actually marketing in every aspect of their life, even getting a job and all these different things. So why would you say, you talk about this in the book, no matter what you do in life, marketing's required. Like it's a must have. Why is this so important?
I think both marketing and sales, you're constantly doing it. And so you're constantly selling yourself every day. If you're trying to sell yourself to get a partner, if you're trying to, let's say you're working somewhere, you're trying to sell one of the initiatives that you're trying to push, you're constantly selling. Marketing is bringing people to the point of sale. So marketing is attracting people, and then you're closing them right there. So I think both go hand in hand. So that's why that chapter is called Alchemy, because you're making magic happen. You're creating magic out of thin air. And the people that don't want to do sales, that don't want to do marketing, they're at a severe disadvantage. And oftentimes in the world of tech, you think just because you build a great product, they're going to come. No, you have to add marketing. And that's why, us doing like a podcast like this, it is marketing. It builds community. It builds goodwill. And one of the easiest ways of marketing, by the way, you don't need to think of it as this icky thing where you're running ads or something like that. It's just, guess what? Jared likes to learn. He likes to teach. That's marketing. If you're putting it out there, you're building in public, that's marketing, because you're going to attract certain people that have the same mindset. So I think it's a no-brainer, and that's why it's a required tool, it's a required power up in your arsenal.
I think it's all type of marketing that you do in all areas of life. There's a selfishness to it as well. Like you can look at it in the podcast of like, there's like, I get to learn from all of these awesome guests like yourself, Eric. And then the amount that I've learned. And then the same with if I'm marketing my business, I build this brand, or
Mm-hmm.
if I'm marketing myself as an influencer on Instagram, it actually makes me feel good. Like, probably not great
Mm-hmm.
because it's boosting the ego, but there is some
Yeah.
level of selfishness in there. And I wanted to ask you, what are like, 1 to 2 things that you've actually you had to use marketing that's not within business, so people can get a bit of an understanding of like some of the times that they should be
Yeah.
using marketing outside of just a monetary transaction or
Yeah.
in a business itself.
I'll give you an example, and this is not a direct monetary transaction, but it is related to hiring great people, right?
Mm.
And so over here, we have a college called USC, and I'm close to it here in LA, and I teach every quarter. So I used to go into the college and I would teach the class, and there would always be one. When you're teaching, you're providing value to the students. So I give them, certain concepts. And there's always going to be 2 or 3 students that ask really good questions. Those are the stars. They're going to go do amazing things. Well, what just happened the other day was we were able to hire one of the stars that asked really good questions. But it's because I showed up in the class. He was asking great questions. And then I was going back and forth with him. And he was marketing himself on Twitter. I happened to see some of the financial people I follow, right? Investors that I follow, he's commenting in the threads. This guy's freaking 20 years old, and he's asking amazing questions around discounted cash flow, things like that. That I didn't even know what I didn't even know what that meant till maybe like age 28 or 29, right? And so that's an example of marketing. Just me giving back. I don't go into that class with expectations. Generally, I just like to teach, right? So I think it's my job to go out there to these colleges and help spread knowledge and affect maybe just 1 or 2 people. But that came back to me, and I never expected that. So that's the best way of doing marketing, doing it without trying to expect something. Because if there's an ulterior motive, sure, it's selfish. But if you have ulterior motives, it becomes sort of, low integrity manipulation type of stuff.
Yes. Yes. And there's those types of people with podcasts out there that it's just all about trying to make a sale with their podcast, or all of their marketing is just like, hey, let's just make money through this. But I think when I think about that, they're missing probably the bigger piece of the puzzle. And the bigger piece of the puzzle is building great relationships with people and learning more. So I think they kind of box themselves into just trying to make the sale, rather than being open to learning more about the industry, learning more about people, building relationships, and getting more value. Like, I'm a strong believer that the most valuable part of my business, or part of my life at all, if you take business out of it, is relationships. And I think they're just missing a big part of it, and they're playing one level of the game, I guess, if we're looking at it different levels, like Mario Brothers or whatever it is. Like, they're playing just one level of the game, and they can't advance to that next level, right?
Oh my God, this is such a good example. So I've been using Clubhouse quite a bit, the app, and it's really great, by the way.
It's been taking off, hey?
It's taking off big time. I highly recommend. It's still very early days right now, but I've been hanging out, and some of the rooms I'm in, it's like some of these people I followed in the world of internet marketing, and I'm like, man, they're still talking about the same things. They're making great money, but they still talk about funnels. They talk about how bad they are as leaders, and they just they talk about how much money they make and all that, and it's all fueled by ego, and they're still playing at the same level. But if you want to play at higher levels, you start to understand things about culture, about leadership, about removing the ego and removing yourself and empowering other people, right? It's all the stuff I used to think was cheesy. I'm like, oh yeah, it's actually important, right? But there's certain levels, to your point. There's levels to everything.
Yeah. I guess you can look at, I agree with you. Like, I looked at those things, and I used to believe people were just saying this and they're not really meaning it, right? They're just saying it to sound good on stage or whatever it is, and they haven't really embodied it but there's some certain people that do embody it that
Yep.
just reap massive rewards from it. And it's marketing in itself too, really.
Yep. Yeah. All that stuff scales for the long term. I think going back to talking about patience and long-term mindset, poker mindset, however you want to put it, if you think like that, you'll be fine for the long term. If you just keep thinking about short-term profits, you're not going to do as well.
Yeah. You may have just answered my next question, but I want to open this up rather into a subject, not just a question. Let's talk about long game here. I don't know how I want to frame this question, but we look at, and I don't want to talk about politics, but we look at people that, may have a 4-year term versus a 10-year term, right?
Mm-hmm.
From different countries and different places in the area. And people with a 4-year term can probably not do as much as somebody with a 10-year term. And a lot of us are setting goals for, like, as we record this is the start of January 2021, they're, setting goals for 1 year, the whole of 2021. And they're just not even conscious that they should be setting 10-year, 5, 10, 20-year goals.
Mm-hmm.
How important is this in its entirety, and talk to me more about like how you sort of set your goals and why you like to think about long term, and how long term is too long term, right?
Yeah, I think there's similar. There's levels to all of this as well. So if you read the book called Scaling Up by Vern Harnish, she talks about the concept of a BHAG, which is a big, hairy, audacious goal.
Mm-hmm.
That's a 10 to 25 year goal. And it sounds like you're familiar with it. There's also something known as the 3HAG. So there's a book called The 3HAG Way. That's a 3-year goal, right? So you have a BHAG, you got a 3HAG. I don't know how many HAGs there are, but then you have your annual goals. So that's 1 year. And then you break it down by quarters, right? So 90 days. And then, you can set what your monthly goals are. And that's generally how I look at it. But if you want to look macro level, how I think about it is my book's called Leveling Up. I love learning and I love teaching. My entire mission is to level up the world. And I will never do that. I'll never, ever do that. And that's what a mission is. When I wake up in the morning, I got this big mission. I'm just going to keep going until I die. And I'm just going to keep doing it. And if you want to talk about like, maybe something that's, Eric, that's very pie in the sky. What's the number? So a lot of people now know who Chuck Feeney is. I read that book when I was 25 years old. It's a book called The Billionaire Who Wasn't. And it's about this guy who gave away $8 billion, founded all the duty-free stores, right? The first half, he's very competitive. The other half, he's philanthropist, right? And so for me, I'm not going to say, I'm trying to virtue signal by doing all this. I just want to play the game and I just want to get rid of most of it and I'm done, right? Somebody else go play the game, but like donate to the causes I believe in, I'm done. Because I don't want to leave a bunch of money for my family. Usually that doesn't cause, it causes pain for generations. So, you want to equip humanity to win for the long term. So my goal there, if you gave away $8 billion, originally I had set, 1% of that, right? And now I'm like, okay, why not just give away 10%? So 800 million. But now I'm getting older and I'm thinking, why not just go for the 8 billion and shoot for the stars, land on the moon? So we'll see what happens, right? But that's a number.
Yeah, and it's a never-ending journey, really, because, I mean, if you're much like me, which we're very similar, I suppose, still being a philanthropist into your 70s and 80s, why would you not? And why would you not just keep doing something that's a game to you?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. So the concept of retirement doesn't make sense to me. Because you're only given this one life. Why would you just want to sit around, right? That's what retirement means to me. I don't want to just sit around. I want to be productive. I want to do things that are fun to me. And working is so fun, right? I'm working, being around family members. That's what's fun. So,
well, you only retire from something that you don't want to be doing, correct?
Exactly. Love that.
As an example, if I look at one of my biggest idols, who is Kelly Slater. Not sure if you've heard of him. He's won the most world championships out of any sport. And he is nearly into his 50s. And he's still...
What sport?
Surfing.
Okay, got it.
And he is still in the top 10 of the best athletes, competing against people that are between the age of 18 to 33, I think, and he's nearly in his 50s and in the top 10. There's no need for him to retire because he doesn't need to retire from something he doesn't want to do. And I think that's something that all of us listening should be thinking about with what we're doing in our life right now and where we're spending our time. Like, is there a certain thing that if we're spending a certain amount of time on something and we're urging ourselves to retire from it, how much longer should we actually be in that?
100%.
Spending time on that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a huge, one of my archetypes or soul essences or whatever you want to call it is I'm a visionary, and I can't help myself. Like when I wake up or I'm in the shower, I'm like sitting on the couch thinking is I'm definitely a visionary, and I like to envision not just 5 or 10 years, but 20 years into the future. And I may not have that as a solid ground set goal with a system, step-by-step system on how to get to there. But how important do you find it is to have a vision 5, 10, 20 years? Is it too long for some people, or is it, what's your take on that?
I don't think so. I think it's good to have it and recalibrate every year.
Yeah.
But it gives you a target to aim for, because if you don't have a target, you're just going to wake up in the morning wandering around aimlessly. And I think you want to have flexibility with the goal, because information changes over time.
Yes. Yes. Key point there is flexibility, because I feel that sometimes people may have this vision one year and they get to the next year, which they may be doing now at the start of 2021, with like, oh no, I've just planned this whole year of vision, and now it's completely changed, and they have this internal battle with themselves. However,
it's a living vision.
Yeah, a living vision. Yeah, it's cultured, it's alive. So my vision, in fact, actually changes. It can change as we speak.
Yep, totally.
Yeah,
you might get some crazy information, and then the next day something changes, right? Maybe you really like this politician or whatever, something happens, and then maybe not so much anymore. Who knows, right? So
yeah. Eric, it's been absolutely excellent to speak to you. I greatly appreciate your time. I greatly appreciate you coming on. I'm sure everybody else does. Leaving something with the audience. If somebody was thinking about wanting to level up in their life, and where would be a starting point for them? Where would be the absolute starting point for them if they wanted to at least start leveling up? If they knew nothing about mindset, they knew nothing about marketing, nothing about poker and all that sort of stuff. What would be a starting point?
Well, I mean, selfishly, I could say my book, but what I would say is,
and I'm saying that too as well. So
yeah, I mean, look, the book's a starting point for that. It's really geared towards reframing your mindset. We talked a lot about mindset in here. You can go to levelingup.com or just go to your favorite retailer and just type in leveling up. But if you said, hey, like, I don't want to buy a book right now, I think studying mental models, right? Looking at how Charlie Munger, who's Warren Buffett's partner, how he talks and how he thinks about investing. Ultimately, what it comes down to at the end of the day is how well are you programmed? What's in your mind, and then how's your body programmed as well? You constantly keep those things, functioning at a high level, and you'll be good. Because what ends up happening is, the best investment you can make is in yourself. You keep investing in that, and then the production you're going to have is going to be limitless.
Yeah, the better the inputs, the better the outputs, right?
100%.
Thank you so much again, everybody. There'll be links to the book in the show notes. Go away and check out that book. It is on point. I'm all about mindset, and I just can't get behind this anymore. So thank you again, Eric. Everybody that is listening, and I want to say thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. Now, before you go and listen to another podcast, whether you're binging this one, which I know a lot of you guys do, or you're listening to something else, before you do, we talked a lot about mindset in this episode. If you're wanting to level up yourself, re-listen to this. If you know somebody else that is wanting to level up, make sure you do them a massive favor and share this episode with them. Think about 2 to 3 people that are wanting to level up in their life, and share this podcast episode with them. Selfishly, yes, it's going to help me grow the Bob podcast as well. But what's more important is these people, even if they never listen to another episode of my podcast again is they're going to learn how to level up in their own life. So please do a massive favor to them and share this podcast episode. That's it from me, guys. Thanks, and I'll see you on the next one.